Welcome everyone to the CAIS YouTube channel. Today we are sitting down with CAIS Associate Editor Cathal Doyle, who is heading up the Open Review Initiative at CAIS. Today, Cathal is going to explain the Open Review process, the reasons behind it, and what it is. So, Cathal, if you could tell us, what is Open Review? What are the defining qualities of an Open Review?
Yeah, I guess to understand open review, we probably first have to understand what open science is. And I always say to my colleagues, like, open science is all about being transparent in terms of how we do research, and then trying to make that research accessible to people. So things like open access, we would have heard of, making our publications available. So open peer review is just another open science practice then. So we have things like, as I said, open access, open data, open artifact, and open peer review falls under that umbrella. Another way of practicing open science. And again, the way I kind of define open peer review as being transparent with the peer review process itself. So again, touching back into that word of transparency. And then it can have different components that kind of make it up to be open peer review. For example, authors and reviewers might be aware of each other and can actually contact each other during that review if you want to be that open with it. And then at the end of the review, it's about publishing the reviews alongside the responses to those reviews with the accepted manuscript. So again, the public can have a look back in terms of how the paper kind of progressed to its final manuscript.
So if that is what Open Review is, why Open Review? What is the purpose? What do you hope to accomplish with Open Review?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And there's a few things that I think we're trying to accomplish there. Again, that idea of increased transparency and accountability. A good example here is probably a review that I got once upon a time that just said, "This is not research," and that was the final thing. As you can hear, that's not very constructive to me, the author. It doesn't give me anything to work on or to build on or anything like that. So what I want to do and what we want to do here is try and improve or increase the transparency and accountability in terms of the way reviews are written, how well they are written. And what I'm trying to achieve there is foster maybe that constructive dialogue between reviewers and authors of a particular manuscript. Another thing that you can see from it is if reviews, or if you get some good reviews and they're made publicly available, then early career academics and whatnot can see those reviews and see, oh, that's how you can write a good constructive review versus writing something like "this is not research." Another one that I think doesn't get a lot of coverage is reviewers often are giving up their time to do this thing, and there's often not a lot of recognition for them. So, and I think with something like open peer review, you can start to provide that recognition to go, hey, here's who reviewed it, and here's how well here's their review and how well it actually looks. And then the other one that I think is a pretty obvious one again is trying to promote some of those open science practices is something that I certainly encourage people, and certainly what we're trying to do with something like open peer review.
So in the big picture, in the review process, there are a lot of people involved, and in the publication of an article from beginning to end, from author to reader, who benefits from Open Review? Why might somebody opt for it?
Oh, yeah, that's another good question. And I see potential benefits for quite a few people, or quite a few stakeholders in there. The first one being the authors themselves. I think when you follow an open peer review process, and if you're the author, what you're hoping to get is more transparent and constructive feedback. So again, you're kind of getting stuff that you can bite into a little bit and use to improve or whatnot your manuscript. As I said, I think the other people who can benefit from this are the reviewers themselves, because their expertise and their contributions are being formally recognized when we get to see their name and whatnot at the end alongside their reviews. I'd also argue the IS research community as a whole benefits from that. I think when we're more transparent and we're more accountable for how we do research, that can only improve or increase the standard of research that we start to see and whatnot. So again, definitely a benefit there. The other one is an interesting one as well, I think, is readers of a piece of research. I personally find it very interesting to see how a manuscript goes from a blank page to a full page. Obviously, with open peer review, you don't get to see that, but you can see that feedback or those reviews as it went through a few different rounds. So that does a few things. I find that just interesting in and of itself, but it also maybe increases my trust in the findings that the paper is actually there, because I can see how it evolved through the reviews. And then the other person I see is, or the other person who benefits in this would be the journal itself, I think, where, hey, this is not being done in too many other IS journals. Here's us kind of being a little bit innovative and putting forward some an interesting approach. And again, that kind of is a benefit for CAIS.
I think too, for authors to see how other authors' work is reviewed, you get a chance to see how other authors get reviewed, which I think gives perspective. It broadens sort of the scope of what the review process. It's not just me, right? I think everybody is getting reviewed, and these are how they're getting reviewed. That's nice to open that up too, I think.
But that's what I go back to. I find that very interesting to see how people write their reviews and see the type of feedback that they give and whatnot. That's the stuff that I find fascinating with it, actually. Yeah.
So how will the open review process work, and what, if any, drawbacks are there to it?
Yeah, well, I'll start with how we're going to do it at CAIS, I guess. Authors will submit as usual. They go online, they submit a manuscript, and it's there that they will be given the option. So we're not getting rid of the traditional peer review at all. We're just having the option. You can continue with a traditional peer review if that's what you want to do, or you can choose open peer review. And then if they choose that option, the manuscript as usual will go to the AE. The AE will do a quick review of it to say, hey, is this something that is worth reviewing? And if they decide it is, then it'll be on the AE to find reviewers who are open to the idea of participating in an open peer review process. And the other major difference that happens here then is, once we have the reviewers, we will provide them with the lead author of the article or the manuscript. And what that allows them to do is, if there is some clarification, or they'd like to confirm something, or they'd like to ask them some question around what they're reviewing, you're giving them the opportunity for that dialogue to actually open up there. Other than that, the review actually continues as normal as a traditional review. Reviewers review. That goes back to the AE. They make a decision. And if they decide updates, or they need to make some changes, they suggest to make the changes. Where the open peer review kind of comes back into it again is at the end. So if a manuscript is accepted, we ask the reviewers if they would like to sign their reviews and their institution. We also ask the authors to sign their responses to the reviews. And then once the manuscript or the published manuscript goes online, the reviews are made available with them. So again, people can kind of see the history of the feedback that was received. And then, very interestingly, I think we've opened up the option then as well of public review. So in other words, once a manuscript's been published, there's options there for the public or whoever's reading it to come along and leave some comments or leave some feedback on that as well. Which I think is very interesting. And And then just to clarify, then we have quite a detailed BPMN diagram available that kind of describes that whole process, and it'll show you kind of who's involved and the back and forth and whatnot. So it's definitely worth having a look at that.
Yes, good. And I will make sure those links are in the description of the video so that our viewers can go ahead and directly click those links after they're done watching the video. What are some drawbacks, Cathal, to open review? What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, and I'm the first person to hold my hands up here and say I'm not claiming open peer review is perfect. I'm just saying it is a process or another way of doing reviews that we can kind of see what we can get out of it. And so I've spoken a little bit about the benefits, and there are certainly drawbacks. I mean, there's some obvious ones there, things like reviewer reluctance. So in other words, some reviewers just don't want their feedback to be made available publicly. That's absolutely fine. That's not if that's how you feel, then you don't need to be a reviewer there. There's also that idea of early career academics where they mightn't want to provide critical feedback because they know that the author that they're reviewing might be a big author or seminal author in the area or whatnot. And that also has an impact on potentially less critical reviews, because if people are aware that this is going to be visible, maybe I should try to be nice or not as critical with what I'm seeing inside there. There's also, I guess, an increased burden on reviewers, because again, if this is, I'm speaking from a personal perspective here, I guess, but I know if someone's going to be reviewing or seeing what I write, I want to make sure that that's of a good standard. So to me, that's a potential benefit and drawback in that it forces me to write hopefully good reviews. But obviously that takes more time and effort that goes into that little process there. The other one, and again, it's just the option, or the because reviewers know who the authors are, there is that potential for personal attacks to come into play. And again, when you open up a comment system, that potential is there. But you're kind of hoping that I think we're hopefully mature enough, especially when we're submitting to a journal like CAIS, that's those types of things don't happen. So I'm quite conscious of a lot of those things, and again, I'm kind of we're working, I guess, with CAIS on how we can kind of reduce some of those potential drawbacks. And as I said at the start, it's not perfect, and it'll take time to kind of refine and make sure that we can reduce quite a few of those drawbacks. But certainly, I think acknowledging them and being aware of them is a good thing in order to try and address them.
So, how widely available is open review in the IS ecosystem, publishing ecosystem? How widely available is it in the research publication ecosystem more broadly? Is CIS taking a leadership position, and if so, how?
Yeah, great question. The wider, if we start with the wider open peer review process that people implement, information systems research, not so much. I'm not aware of too many. Other fields love open peer review, especially things like medical fields and whatnot. I think they've been practicing it for 30 plus years, so it's not a new thing either. In terms of information systems research, I've not come across any journals that are doing this. So again, I kind of went, oh, here's an opportunity to try and be the first, or one of the first at least, to go, hey, we want to acknowledge that open peer review is a thing. There are benefits and there are drawbacks, but we want to try and give authors an option to go down that particular route. And what I kind of see from CAIS then in that way is that's a commitment to trying to greater transparency, greater accountability in terms of publishing. And as I said, I think we're one of the first adopters. And what that is doing, I guess, is challenging some of those traditional norms, or that we see in journals quite often. And again, being very clear and transparent with it, this is an option. So I think options are quite often good. We're saying, hey, if you want a traditional review, we can do that. But we've also got the option of open peer review. So it's not a, you have to choose this. We're giving that choice to the authors. The other thing I think that we've done quite well is very clear implementation and guidelines on how we do that. So I mentioned we have the editorial that gives an overview of all these things, and then we have here's our process for how we're going to do this. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we've got that BPMN diagram that kind of even goes into more detail to explain who's involved, where it's involved, and how that flow kind of happens within the process. So I think we've tried to be as clear about how we're implementing it, the guidelines for how to do it, and I guess what when we talk about leadership and whatnot, hey, we're trying to promote, I guess, a discussion and awareness of open science in IS research and the practices of open science in IS research. And that's why I kind of say open peer review is one of those practices. Hopefully I've already had 1 or 2 emails from people saying, hey, I've seen that you're doing this. This is a great initiative, quite interested. How can I get involved and whatnot? And that's the type of discussion I'd love to kind of get going in IS research and discipline in general, is open science and the different practices. And as I say, I think CAIS is kind of giving us one of those prongs to latch onto and kind of get talking about.
Yeah, I'd say, anecdotally, from our first announcements on social media and based on the downloads that your editorial has already received from the AISE library, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of support from people at all stages of the research process, seasoned scholars and new scholars. There's interest in it. It's exciting. And CIS is the right place for it. So Cathal, thank you so much. Thank you for sitting down with us, explaining this. Thank you for spearheading the initiative and writing the editorial, which I will also link in the description to this video as well, so that people who come here to watch this can read the editorial and visit the Open Review Depository on the CIS website, where we already have a open review document posted, so they can see the whole thing laid out before them live on our website and in the AISE library. Thank you, Cathal, so much for sitting down with us today.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I would just add, if anyone does have any questions or comments or wants to discuss it further, feel free to send me an email. I'm more than happy to get that discussion and that chat going.
Great. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.